Thank you all. Please be seated. First business at the annual town meeting is the election of the chairman of the Sandhurst Town Council. Before I do take nominations, I would just like to take the opportunity to thank all of my fellow councillors for my year as the mayor, for those and everyone that supported. I've had an incredible year. It's been a journey, but whoever takes on the role again, I hope they have the same experiences that I have. My wife and I and the children have just loved pretty much everywhere that we went, and the reception that we've received from any of the events that we've been to, from the community at large, has been phenomenal. It's something that I will cherish for the rest of my life. Thank you all. Moving on back to agenda item 1. The first business of the annual meeting is the election of the chairman of Sandhurst Town Council, who will be referred to as the mayor. And this is the item before us. I would like to invite nominations for the mayor of Sandhurst. Councillor Graham Birch.
Chairman, I would like to nominate Paul Widdowson as mayor.
Thank you very much. Do I have a second?
I'd like to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Quigg.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Chris Ives.
Thank you, Councillor Quigg.
I'd like to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. As we have 2 nominations, does it say here? Only says the 1 nomination. We will take a vote. Do they have to prepare a speech? No? Okay, we're going to take a vote then. So can I have a show of hands for those in favour of Councillor Widdowson? Keep your hands up, please, while we count. We have 11.
Are you voting?
I'll vote. Can we have a second? Can we have a show of hands for Councillor Ives, please? 8. It's 12 to 8. Congratulations. In that case, I'm pleased to announce that Councillor Widdowson has been elected.
Got the job then, have I?
You haven't been. Go through first.
Yes, bear with me, people, you know. Got to manoeuvre the Rolls Royce, you know. I've even got a pen.
Okay, so I'll now ask the new mayor to sign the declaration of acceptance of office. Much.
Now, the first business falling to me as mayor is the election of the vice chair of Sandhurst Town Council. So this is the item before us. I would like to nominate Councillor Graham Birch for the Deputy Mayor of Sandhurst. Can I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second it.
Okay. Is there any more nominations, please?
I'd like to nominate councillor Chris Ives.
And could I have a second?
I'd like to second it, please.
Thank you. So, as there are two nominations, could I call a vote, please? So the vote first is for councillor Graham Birch. Thank you, everyone. In that case, I would like to ask if there is a vote for councillor Ives, please. All those in favour?
Twelve to 8.
In that case, I am pleased to announce that councillor Graham Birch is duly elected as deputy mayor. May I be the first to congratulate Graham on his new role as deputy mayor. You can come up here. You can sit on the big boys' table.
Should we move the table out so you can position yourself better?
No, I shall
Just hold of it.
go along here. Now, if you have as much fun as I did over the past year in getting this to hang right on your shoulders, you were a very good deputy mayor. And face Ange, you're on candy camera. You all. Now, at this point, can I welcome members of the public to the meeting and invite any questions? That's a first, no questions. There being no questions from the public, I will formally open the meeting and move to agenda item number 5, which is apologies for absence. And
apologies this evening from councillors Mrs Bettison and Bettison. And I've also had tentative apologies for councillor Thompson, who may be late but may not make it.
does anyone bring any other apologies from other members?
Yes, I have apologies from Mike Butcher. He was taken to hospital earlier today, so he's resting at home.
Please pass on our thoughts. We miss him greatly. Agenda item number 6 is to receive any declarations of interest from members on the business to be transacted this evening. Are there any declarations at this time? Members are reminded that they can declare an interest at any time during the meeting should they consider it necessary to do so. I move to item number 7 on the agenda to approve the minutes held on the 6th of March, which are given on pages 1693 through to 1695. Would someone care to move these minutes as a true and correct record, please? Thank you, Councillor Mrs.
They
Watson.
haven't been moved yet.
Deputy, sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to move those minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All those in favour, please show. Any against? That is carried. I now move to the work of committees meetings held since the last town council, and I'll start with strategy and policy. But before I invite Councillor Allen to move those minutes, does any member wish to ask a question for clarification? Councillor Allen, please.
If I'd like to move that the minutes of the strategy and policy meeting held on the 27th of March be accepted as a true record.
Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it. Oh, that's fine. Second it on that one.
Please don't fight over it. Thank you very much.
I didn't.
All those in favour, please show. Those against?
Hold on, hold on. Can you tell that again? Still again.
Those against? Thank you. I now move to the Leisure Committee. And again, before I ask Councillor Mrs Hill to move that the minutes of the meeting be received, does any member wish to ask a question? Councillor Mrs Hill, please.
I'd like to move the minutes of the Leisure Committee meeting held on the 20th of March to be accepted as a true record.
Seconded this one.
All those in favour, please show. Those against? Thank you. I now move to the Environment Committee. And again, before I ask Councillor Panesar to move the minutes of the meeting, Steve, does any member wish to ask a question? Councillor Panesar.
I would like to propose the minutes of the Environment Committee meeting held on the 13th of March to be as true.
Can I have a seconder, please? All those in favour, please show. Those against? Thank you. I now move to the planning meeting. Before I ask Councillor Dale Birch to move the minutes of the meeting be received, does any member wish to ask a question? Councillor Dale Birch.
I'd be first to congratulate you, sir. I'd like to move the minutes of the planning committee held on the 24th of February and also the meeting held on the 31st of March as a true record.
And I will second that. All those in favour, please show. Those against? I move to agenda item 12. Approve the structure of committees, including delegation arrangements. I'd like to propose the attached terms of reference be approved. Is that seconded?
I'd like to second the terms of reference.
Thank you. Councillor Allen. All those in favour, please show.
Point of order request, please. At what point would you like me to go through our standing order proposals?
It's down the orders.
That will come further down in the agenda.
Not under the reference. Okay, thank you.
Wow.
Assuming it doesn't affect the terms of reference.
Yes, you
It
have
affects
got
the terms of
some, you've got
reference.
some in there that you need to bring up under terms of reference.
Hence my question.
So whichever policy they relate to, they need to be brought up under the relevant policy.
Okay, so committee composition, would you like that one raised now? Excuse me. We raised this last year and we're re-raising it this year. The composition of committees. At the moment, the committee chair, councillor can be a chair of one committee and vice chair of another committee. Everyone can see by the amount of people in the room, we've got 24 councillors to choose from across 3 political parties and an independent. A wide choice from which to take. Therefore, we propose that if a councillor elected a chair or a vice chair of a committee that from being elected as a chair or a vice chair of another committee. And the aim of this, and the result would be, is that the balance of leadership and responsibility doesn't just sit with two key roles as it currently does, and should lead to a more varied and diverse composition for committee chairs. That's that.
Thank you, councillor Hisbury. Would anyone else like to speak?
So
Just have a second.
that was a proposal. I hear a second.
Happy to second that.
Okay. Would anyone else like to speak?
Sticking procedure, second and speak at this point.
Unless you wish to reserve.
And unless they wish to reserve.
Reserve.
All those in favour of those?
Oh, no.
Debate.
Debate. I do beg your pardon. It is now open to everyone to debate.
Can I just, before we start this, just remind everyone that we do have the protocol for the rules of debate. And just a couple of things that I'd like to draw your attention to is, unless permitted by the chair of the meeting, a councillor may speak once in the debate on a motion, except when they're speaking on an amendment moved by another councillor to move or speak, or another amendment if the motion has been amended since they last spoke, to make a point of order, to give a personal explanation, or to exercise the right of reply. And excluding the motion being read out, contributions or speeches by councillors that relate to the motion shall not exceed 3 minutes each. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dalebudge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't be supporting this because I think the suitable person for the role should be allowed to stand for whatever role they feel is appropriate. And I think it would be inappropriate if, because you became chairman of something at the request of fellow members, that you were then automatically precluded from you becoming a vice chairman elsewhere. I don't think that recognises a proper process and democracy by exclusion. And I think that if we have people that are multi-talented, then that's what we will be able to do. If others wish to come forward, then let them take part actively in those committees to demonstrate the qualities that they can bring, and then to qualify on merit to challenge for those positions. So just excluding someone because they've got something else, I'm sorry, I just don't support that.
Councillor Forster.
There's a lot of talent around this table. There are people with a vast array of experiences, lived experiences. There are people here who can contribute to the residents in this town in a way which builds on that experience. And as councillors, it is not democratic, it is not the right thing to concentrate key appointments in one or two individuals. It is not. We should look at why all of us stood in the first place, and that is for this town and for the residents of this town. This isn't about excluding. This is more about using all the talents that we have to hand. And I ask you all to think about the talents in this room and who can support in a more diversive and inclusive way. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to speak? Councillor Allen.
Yes, again, I can't support it because, as Dale has said, I think it limits putting the right person in the right job. And also, I mean, there are roles, personnel subcommittee, for example, is comprised of the vice chair and chair of a particular committee. So excluding them from that role, you'd have to rewrite the personnel committee as well. So I think that would be, the wrong thing to do, because, there is a reason why those two roles are two members of the personnel committee. So I'm afraid I can't support this motion.
Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Birch.
First of all, I understand the reasons why it's been put forward, and I think my one question to yourself would be, why would you have to be a chair or vice chair to contribute? Which I know you'll come back to me on, but it's a good question. And I have another just quick question as well, maybe because the mayor and deputy mayor, I believe, go on the strategy and policy as chair and vice chair. Would that automatically, I guess this is to yourself, would that automatically preclude them from being chair and vice chair on other committees? So
They're not chair and vice.
they're not chair.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're just on it. Okay.
They're on.
Okay. So just really not speaking so much as just asking for a bit of clarity on that.
Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Edwards.
Yes, I think you raised some really good points. I think you do want a diversity of experience in these roles. I think that brings knowledge and good outcomes, actually. And I think these roles can get concentrated. This Councillor Allen did raise a good point, and I would just like that answered about, if you can answer that, about the subcommittee, and that maybe some other peculiarities that might not have been addressed. If they could be addressed, then I think I probably would be minded to support this motion.
Would anyone else like to speak? Okay. Therefore, I would move.
Order,
Second draft, spoken, yeah.
She didn't want to.
No, she's reserved.
So I just wanted to come back as a point of order, perhaps on to understand from what Councillor Allen just said. My understanding of the makeup of the personnel subcommittee is that it's the chair of the strategy and policy and the vice chair of the strategy and policy. So how, if you're then saying that what we're asking is that somebody can't be vice and chair of two different committees, but the personnel subcommittee is coming from one committee, that doesn't really fit with what you had just said. So please, could you help me to understand your point?
I've already spoken, so I can't speak again.
nothing's the right of reply.
For clarification, I think for his.
So because the terms of reference for the personnel subcommittee are that two of the three members are the chair and vice chair of strategy and policy.
Which fits with what Councillor Fleet's proposed.
So you're saying that basically the personnel subcommittee could not include the chair, vice chair of strategy and policy. That's the one thing I'm saying, is it?
Am I allowed to reply? And the right to answer, right to
I
reply?
think that's the
So,
intent.
thank you, Councillor Allen. Indeed, yes, it is absolutely what we're saying. And in fact, your next amendment in terms of reference would be to the composition of the personnel subcommittee. As a second point. Hope that clarifies, and for you as well, Councillor Edwards.
Would anyone else like to speak? Therefore, can I call a vote, please, in favour of Councillor Mrs. Quigg's proposition?
So could I, on point of order, I believe you have to be here for the whole debate in order to vote.
It's true.
That is
Test the system. My apologies for being late.
We recorded them then, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you. And those against, please? Any abstentions?
So 9 in favour, 10 against, and 1 abstained. Yes.
Okay, moving on to item 13 on the agenda.
Excuse me, point of order, the next one, Personnel Subcommittee, terms of reference, I assume you want me to raise that here too.
Thanks, yeah.
The next item of business is the appointment. No.
No,
Oh,
this
sorry.
one also
You're gonna
relates to.
raise it
Yeah.
right now.
So carrying on from that motion just now, that proposal, and picking up on councillor Edwards and councillor Allen's point, Personnel Subcommittee. Our current terms of reference scheme of delegation, May 2025 says, the full council agree the terms of reference of membership of committees annually. Subcommittees and working group terms of reference and memberships are agreed by the appointing committee. And yet last year, membership of the Personnel Subcommittee was not agreed by the appointing committee at the first meeting. And when this was raised with the Chair of Strategy and Policy, Councillor Allen stated that personnel is a subcommittee which reports into S&P. As such, its membership is not voted on an annual basis. When its membership needs to change, the change comes from S&P, but there is no requirement to reconfirm this annually. We would dispute this, and given HALC's guidance, which very clearly states it must be reviewed at the first S&P meeting, the wording from HALC is that you have indicated that the Personnel Subcommittee is a subcommittee of the Strategy and Policy Committee, and therefore, if not reviewed at the annual meeting, which is this one, its composition and structure I would have expected to be reviewed in the first S&P meeting of the council year. That didn't happen last year, despite the fact that I raised it as a specific query. So for the avoidance of doubt and for clarity, we propose that standing orders are amended so that the Personnel Subcommittee is changed, that the chair and the deputy cannot be the chair and the deputy of the Strategy and Policy Committee. To me, it's a bit of a nonsense that the subcommittee, which rolls up to a main committee, has the chair and the vice chair of the main committee on the subcommittee. So we propose that the Personnel Subcommittee composition changes to three, a minimum of three, which it says now. There isn't a maximum, there's a minimum. To a minimum of 3 councillors that are not the chair or the vice chair of the Strategy and Policy Committee, because it rolls up to that committee. Thank you.
I will second that motion.
Thank you, councillor Forster. All those in favour?
Debate.
Sorry, could you beg your pardon? Would anyone like to debate now, please? Councillor Allen.
Again, I apologise. I still can't support this. It's because of the remit of the personnel subcommittee. I think it's important that the reason it's got the vice chair and chair of strategy and policy on it is because they're closely involved with everything to do with the employment of the staff. And I believe it is fairly important that those 2 people continue in that role. Thank you.
Councillor Forster.
So I would just bring your attention to what best practice is. We asked HALC, for those who are not familiar with it, it provides advice to councils such as our own, very best practice that we should undertake. For the very good reasons my colleague has just explained, we should separate these 2 functions and align with best practice from the organisation who provides this to us. It's relatively straightforward. There is a S&P committee with a chair and a vice chair. There is a subcommittee which rolls up to that. This is a sensible, pragmatic approach to dealing with committee structure based on best practice.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Councillor Birch.
Yeah, it's quite troubling, the extent of amendment that we're being subjected to. The reason why I'm troubled is because I'm not sure what the end result of what we're talking about will be. Because at the moment, we're talking only about a subgroup of the strategy and policy. But by logical progression on that, are there other subgroups, working groups, etc., where by this a chair or vice chair would be excluded? And again, I don't like this exclusion auto type concept. Now, before considering this, may I suggest that the consequences of it are given a proper examination. And just because we've asked help or whoever, what they probably haven't said is you can't do it the way you are doing it. That's seldom the advice we get from them. So I'm not troubled that the way we're doing it now is in any way illegal, inappropriate in that context. So I can't support this in its current form because of the potential to meddle in other parts that can't be reached at the moment. So can I counsel caution? And my caution says I won't be supporting.
I do, and apologies everyone. I'm trying to understand a bit more about it. I'm not on the strategy and policy, and if I'm being asked to make a decision, I'd like to ask a couple of questions. Do the chair and vice chair of strategy and policy currently in the setup, are they automatically in the working personnel group? That's question one.
Yes.
Does the chair and the vice chair being part of that group automatically exclude anyone from being part of that personnel group? Because I'm not a fan, and before I think you raised a point, I think, which was a really good one about councillors that had a year's experience or something like this. I'm really not a fan of excluding anyone from anything. But yeah, I'd like to get confirmation on that. And also, would it be just that it could be changed so that the chair and vice don't have to be, if it is a case that people are being excluded? Just questions and ideas. And apologies, I'm not on Stratton Polls, so.
Okay, so to answer your question, in terms of, yes, at the moment, the personnel subcommittee is made, it's the terms of reference say that there is a minimum of 3, one of which is the chair of S&P, the other is the vice chair of S&P, and it doesn't name the third one. Now, the reason that I'm raising this, going back to the beginning when I stood up before, appreciate you weren't part of S&P last year, Graham, so you wouldn't have the backstory, is that when Councillor Davenport, who my understanding was on the personnel committee subcommittee.
No, she wasn't.
No, she wasn't.
Never been.
So
She's been as mayor.
she was.
That's subcommittee.
Not personnel, she's never been on, no.
So when the
She's
committee,
on strategy and policy, but never on personnel subcommittee, no.
so for last year, the three members of the subcommittee were councillor Allen as chair of S&P, councillor Mrs Jean Bettison as vice chair of S&P, and the third member is councillor Hazel Hill. Now, I can't see anything, please, I'm happy to be told I'm wrong and you can point me to the minutes, but at what point was councillor Hill elected under the S&P committee as to be that third person?
About 3 years ago.
That's not acceptable. It's going to be weird.
But that's my point. According to how
You
guidance,
do that annually?
according to HALC guidance, and this I raised with you, Nick, last year,
Yeah.
as I read out, according to HALC guidance, as a personnel subcommittee, every year membership should be put open, and it hasn't been.
Do it.
And so rolling it forward year to year is wrong. It is an irregularity and it is wrong.
Can I
I
just
challenged you on that
point out-
last year and you told me that you didn't have to do it.
Can I just point out that there is nothing that says you have to do it in legislation? It is best practice. However, there is nothing legislative that insists that you have to do it.
Okay, well, all I can say is, having consulted HALC, that they have said that as it is, it should have been reviewed at the annual meeting, and its composition and structure, I would have been expected to have been reviewed in the first S&P meeting, as it wasn't reviewed in this meeting. So I can only go by the advice that I was given by HALC.
Can I ask a question?
Councillor Mossam had his hand up.
Well, my point is, you said that it's a minimum of 3. Can be anybody. Why hasn't anybody else applied to be?
I refer you to the last point I just made, councillor Wilson, that it hasn't been opened to anybody else, it wasn't reviewed.
Yeah, fine.
Councillor Mrs Williams.
I just think that members of our community, we want to see us behaving with unbiased and, open oversight of what we're doing. I don't understand why we have a problem with that. Having a second set of eyes over something is really important to make sure what we're doing is fair and balanced.
Councillor Thompson.
I hesitate to mention this, but when I first joined the council, I put my name forward for S&P, the Strategy and Policy Committee. And at the meeting when the decision was made as to who would be on that committee, I was told that there was a maximum of 3. All right. I know it's the wrong committee, but the principle still applies about the maximum number on a committee, because that was the problem. I agree with you. There shouldn't be a restriction, which means you can have more than 3. And by removing the actual obligation for the vice chair to be on, wouldn't actually prevent the vice chair being elected onto that committee.
Anyone else like to speak?
Yeah, so if it's best practice to have the election each year, why have we not done that?
Because it hasn't been put forward, let's put it forward. That's your motions, like,
Would anyone else like to speak? I will then put Mrs Quigg's proposal. All those in favour of it, please. All those against?
Okay, so it's drawn, so it's the chairman's decision.
I wanted a quiet life. In that case, then the motion is not carried.
Yeah.
No, right. The debate is now ended, but I think some of the comments we've had are valid. And may I ask that the Stratton Policy Committee is charged with looking into this so that we do get a more reasonable approach to this? Is everybody
We
rather
need
than
to
just?
raise that separately,
Sorry?
Councillor Birch, because we can't have that as.
No, I don't want it in the, I just want,
You just have the opportunity to.
yeah,
vote
I'm
for
just
that.
happy to bring up the motion to Stratton poll if everybody's happy on that, so we clean this once and for all. Yes?
Yeah, right. The last one under terms of reference, I think the rest go under standing orders, is the grant panel. At the moment, I sat on the grant panel. I was fortunate to have been asked by the previous mayor, Palm, and I was delighted to support and participate with Councillor Bettison and our EO going through all of the grant applications. So thank you for asking me. I do think that it should be open to a broader number. And conversely, actually, this is one that doesn't really have too much detail around it. So we would propose that the grant panel is open to all councillors to volunteer rather than restricting. And we propose that it's administered by the EO, executive officer, in conjunction with the mayor. Sorry, excuse me, my voice is going, in conjunction with the mayor, with a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 5 councillors. So this last year when we just did it, there were just 2 of us.
Three.
It's me, you.
No, yourself, Councillor Mrs Bettison and
Palm, sorry, there was 3 of us. Sorry, Palm. So we propose there's a minimum of 3, but a maximum of 5, so that more people have the opportunity to participate, because I think that that's only a good thing. I should say we think it's a good thing.
I would second that. Thank you, Councillor Folkestone. All those in favour?
Again, sorry I'm speaking to all your motions, but this actually, I do have an issue with that. I would like to know where the grants and what grants have been applied for and would go out. So actually, I would like to be involved in that. And until relatively recently, I didn't fully know that. So I do see some merit in widening the grant kind of proposals personally.
Councillor.
So just to point out that the current makeup of the grants panel, which is shown on pages 13 of the notes, is the chairman of leisure, the chairman of environment, chairperson of environment, sorry, chair of leisure and chair of environment, and it's open to all members with full voting rights by appointment of strategy and policy. So it's already open to any member of the council. It says to be open to all members with full voting rights by appointment of strategy and policy. So the strategy and policy applies the third person, but the other 2 are the chair of leisure and the chair of environment. I don't have a problem with going up to increasing it to 5, but I still think the chair of leisure and the chair of environment ought to be on the grants panel.
Yeah.
So that's that. So technically, I can't support the motion as it stands. I wouldn't mind. I could do an amendment where it's the current composition, but with a maximum of 5.
Interesting.
is that an amendment being raised?
Well, I can propose. I'm happy to propose that as an amendment.
I'll second it.
Do you accept the amendment?
Let's just after.
Can I just reply, Diane? Thank you. I think what you've just said is kind of illustrates Graham's point, is that he actually didn't know about the grants. And so when you say it is appointed by the Strategy and Policy Committee, there's the difference between me saying that councillors volunteer and you saying that the S&P committee appoints. So I think if we can agree some wording where their people are asked to volunteer, so that there is so Councillor Birch, for instance, would have then known about it, then we can reach an agreement. But when you say that it's the third person is appointed by S&P, how can you appoint somebody when the rest of the councillors don't know that they can volunteer for it?
Okay, but are you happy with the chair of leisure and chair of environment being on the grants panel?
I would rather that it wasn't, it was open to all people. And if we say that there's going to be 5, that's 2 heads already taken up. I don't understand this. I know that there is a behaviour of we've always done it this way, therefore we will continue to do it this way. And there is a reluctance to change. We know that, we've experienced it for 2 years. Why can't we just say it's open to 5 councillors, whoever those 5 will be? The chair of environment, they may want to volunteer. There may not be other 4 volunteers, but open it up to 5 and don't mandate what 2 of those 5 are. That's all we're asking.
I can't support that as it is. Thank you.
Mrs. Allen.
Right. This year, I wouldn't have been able to sit on the grants committee for reasons that many people know. Ignore this year. Last year, I didn't know it existed. And I read everything that comes into my inbox. I don't learn it, but I do read it. And if there's something I think, oh, that's a good idea, I do that. I'm very glad that Graham said that because I didn't know. I sat on something earlier on this year. What was that thing that you invited me to, Con?
It was mayoral nomination.
It was the
Civic Award
Civic
nomination.
Awards, that was it. Now, I was invited to that. I was delighted to say, yes, fine, thank you very much. But I bet Lee wasn't. Oh, were you there? No, you were in India.
I was in India.
That was why I was invited. But my point is that we don't always know. And if we're new or lonely, how are we supposed to know? Coming back to the chairs, I think that you do need chairs on something like that because they know what's going on. But I therefore think that there should be a broader group. So if you are insisting on the chair of leisure and planning, leisure and
environment,
there should be 3 or 4 others for a wider participation. I take something that somebody said, I think it was probably Councillor Forster, that said there's a lot of experience around here that's not being tapped. And I feel that I'm one of them. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with Councillor Wilson. I think actually they do have a privileged position. They know a lot of information, the chairs of environment and leisure, so they'll bring that to the committee. So I would like to back Councillor Allen's amendment if it's still going. And also, if you've rejected it, doesn't it then go to a vote? So,
no, I didn't. Nobody seconded it, and I hadn't pushed it any further. So
can I second it? Or you
I killed it.
Right. Okay.
Hold on a second. Just this is you proposing whether you'd be able to do that. So it's 2 chairs plus 3. 4.
The 2 chairs plus 4. Yeah, accept.
Are you all right with that, Nick? 2 chairs plus 4?
Well, that would 2 chairs plus 4.
Well, the motion will accept that the substantive motion as the
Substantive vote.
sorry, yeah, that amendment as a substantive motion.
So I think if I read it right, the amendment to the grants panel is to increase the size to 6 councillors, which includes the chair of leisure and environment. Is that correct?
Also, what did you say about?
The only other point that I'd like to make that was proposed to be changed by yourself, Nick, was about the S&P committee appointing. Where's does that?
Because that's currently in
there. Yes, that's currently in there.
What do S&P appoint?
So the point here is that if there's 12 volunteers, S&P need to then select some.
Why does it?
It's because their grant panel sit underneath that committee, so that committee
It reports into.
yeah. And ultimately, the strategy and policy committee then agree which grants are actually approved.
Yeah. Okay.
I think basically it means that the S&P committee is in control of money of this council.
Yes, that's
And what we give away in grants to deserving causes must come under the heading of the S&P committee. Okay, so all those in favour of the amendment to the motion
Amended motion.
Substantive motion.
and the amended motion to increase the size of the grants panel, please signify. It's unanimous. So the next item of business is the appointment of councillors to serve on the planning committee, including the election of chair and vice chair. At the start of this process, I'll remind the council that the councillors of each of the Sandhurst wards, and for the benefit of the visitors here, there are 4 wards in Sandhurst, are required to determine the board membership of each committee in advance of this meeting. The planning committee targets at least 2 councillors per ward. I would like to ask councillors to please stand their intention to serve on the planning committee. I would like to propose that the planning committee, and please accept my hand because I can't stand. Thanks, everyone.
Hang on, no, hang on. The number of members of this committee is 8, and we currently have 6.
Little Sandhurst.
Yeah,
here. No, we just,
good.
So it's 2 from each ward, so
Little Sandhurst go first. Dale.
First is Dale.
Little Sandhurst.
It's Dale.
Nikki was last
And
year.
Nikki, you're not standing on,
No, for this.
you're not going for council, you're still.
Planning.
Oh, right.
Down.
Need somebody from the other side.
Yes, we need someone else for Little Sandhurst. So if we move to Central, then we've got Ali and Michael. College Town, Margaret, so we need someone else for College Town.
I think Mike
Mike
was going to, wasn't he?
Mike
Yeah,
Butcher
do
said he
Mike.
wanted to do it.
It's not.
He was a sub, but,
He-
Mike did actually say
He's
he wanted to do
interested,
something.
but he's not here, does that matter?
Just to clarify, other councillors can be nominated onto committees
Yes.
because they all have to be on committees. And then everyone will take a vote to agree the planning committee members in a minute.
He does,
Leave on to substitute planning
he
last.
does want to be.
I'll come on to subs in
Right,
just a
okay.
second. Thank you very much.
Seconds, okay.
So that leaves Ellesmere,
which is myself and Hazel.
yeah. So that's the 8. And we had, as councillor Hutchinson pointed out, subs for each area last year. So is there anyone else that's wanting to be a sub for an area this year?
I'll be sub if you haven't got one for Ellesmere.
I'll do the 6 one.
I would like to propose that the planning committee to constitute with members as written.
So councillor Mrs Margaret Wilson, councillor Mrs Ali Williams, councillor Grossard, councillor Mrs Hill, councillor Dale Birch, councillor Widdowson, councillor Ives, councillor Butcher, councillor Mossam, and councillor Hutchinson as subs.
Is that seconded? Thank you, councillor Brossard. All those in favour, please show. Those against?
Hold on, sorry. Thank you.
Anyone against? Thank you, councillors. So you can please be seated.
No, not yet.
Chair.
You can sit down for that.
Oh, thank you. Chair.
They should be standing.
They said stand up.
It's the people standing that need to appoint the chair and the vice chair.
The council will hereby appoint a chair to the planning committee. Can I invite nominations for chair of the planning committee? And I nominate councillor Dale Birch.
I second that.
Do we have any further nominations for chair of planning? So, councillor Dale Birch, you are chair.
Very much, Mr. Mayor. My first task is to call for nominations for Vice Chairman of Planning, and in so doing, may I nominate Councillor Widdowson.
I'm happy to second that.
There being no other.
Do we have any further nominations for the vice chair of planning? In that case, I've got the job. Next item is the appointment of councillors to serve on the Environment Committee, including the election of a chair and vice chair. I would ask councillors to please stand to confirm their intention to serve on the Environment Committee.
No,
No, that's
there's no
unlimited.
stipulations.
I would like to propose that the Environment Committee be constituted with members as read. Councillor Mrs Mossam, Councillor Mossam, Councillor Allen, Councillor Hutchinson, Councillor Mrs Coppins, Councillor Ives, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Brossard, Councillor Mrs Hill, Councillor Mrs Alan Wilson, and Councillor Anasar. Is that seconded?
Second that, Chair.
All those in favour, please show. Those against? The council will hereby appoint a chair to the Environment Committee. Can I invite nominations for the chair of the Environment Committee?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to propose Councillor Panesar to be chairman of the Environment Committee.
I'd like to second that.
Do we have any further nominations for the chair of Environment?
Yeah, I'd like to nominate councillor Chris Ives.
So this will be.
Second that, obviously.
Thank you, councillor Hutchinson.
Miles away.
So this will be put to a vote for all members that are standing on the
Yes, for all, yeah.
Environment Committee. So those in favour of councillor Panesar as chairman? And those in favour of councillor Ives? I therefore congratulate councillor Panesar, who is chair of the Environment Committee. Can I have nominations for vice chair of the Environment Committee?
I'd like to nominate councillor Chris Ives.
Seconded.
I'd like to nominate councillor Brossard.
I'd like to second that nomination.
Again, there will be a vote for vice chairman. So all those in favour of councillor Ives, please. All those in favour of councillor Brossard?
6-5.
So councillor Brossard,
Ives for 5, councillor Brossard for 6.
you've got the job. The next item of business is the appointment of councillors to serve on the Leisure Committee, including a chair and vice chair. I would ask all councillors to please stand their intention to serve on the Leisure Committee.
Raise her hand.
Like to sit down.
Like to sit down, yeah.
You're
You
allowed.
can see that that's everybody.
So everyone.
Everyone, there's a surprise.
Everybody.
I believe that also includes those that are absent today.
Yes.
Apologies.
James and Mike, yes.
I would like to propose that the Leisure Committee be constituted from the members who have standing. I'm not going to name everyone. Is
All
that
councillors.
all councillors? Is that seconded?
I'll second that.
Yeah.
All those in favour, please show. And it's a bit academic, but those against. The council will hereby appoint a chairman to the Leisure Committee. Can I invite nominations for chair of the Leisure Committee?
I'd like to nominate councillor Graham Birch as chair of the Leisure Committee.
Anyone else?
Second.
Seconded. So in that case, councillor Birch.
No.
You did say it was.
Yeah.
Did see.
So you got the job.
Do we have to vote?
No, to vote.
Nobody else.
Oh, there's no one else.
Sorry, no.
Yeah, you just go get them.
Right.
The
Thank you, you can sit down.
Come on, Ange, get into it.
The council will hereby appoint a vice chair to the Leisure Committee. Can I invite nominations for vice chair of the Leisure Committee, please?
I have a nomination. I'd like to nominate councillor Nikki Coppins.
I'd like to second it.
I would like to nominate councillor Jean Bettison.
Which I would like to second. So all those in favour of the first nomination, please raise their hands.
Nikki Coppins.
You can vote for can. You just got told off, put your hand up at the wrong time. Oops.
Thank you. And votes in favour of Mrs. Jean Bettison, please signify.
10 for Nikki and 11 for Jean.
So councillor Jean, Mrs. Bettison is appointed vice chair. Pleasure. The next item of business is the appointment of councillors to serve on the Strategy and Policy Committee, including the election of a chair and vice chair. I would ask all the councillors to please stand to confirm their intention to serve on the Strategy and Policy Committee. Anyone else? Is there a number to serve on the S&P?
Yeah.
Any son? Yeah.
Just check.
Minimum.
It's a minimum.
It's a minimum.
One.
Just need to make sure.
What's your brain?
From each ward, isn't it?
That's the mayor or less than
Yeah,
the deputy.
that works.
I just recap the wards, so we've got College Town.
Myself and Lee.
College Town. Central.
Oh,
There was more.
There's three little Sandhurst.
Sandhurst. Yeah, that works, yeah.
We had three little Sandhurst last year.
Yeah.
as well, so.
Yeah.
I would like to propose that the Strategy and Policy Committee be constituted where members as read. And again, I'm not going to name all the councillors that stand. Is that seconded?
Just second that, Chair.
Thank you, councillor Allen. All those in favour, please show. Those that are against?
Was that unanimous? I've just, a few delays there. Can we just put up with who was, yeah, okay.
It's right, this is just for the makeup of the committee.
The council will hereby appoint a chair to the S&P committee. Can I invite nominations for the chair of the S&P committee?
Please nominate councillor Nigan.
Have we got any more nominations?
Sorry, give it a second.
No, I can have it a second.
Any more nominations? Excuse me if I'm out, Graham. Can you get the general chairs? All those in favour?
You did it. There's only one nomination.
So Nick, you've got the job
Okay.
once again. The council will hereby appoint a vice chair to the S&P committee. Can I invite nominations for the vice chair of the S&P committee?
Yes, I'd like to nominate councillor Lee Quigg.
Is that seconded?
I seconded it.
Don't all rush at once.
I want to propose councillor Hazel Hill.
I'd like to second that.
So again, we've got a vote. So all those in favour of the first nomination?
Councillor Quigg.
Councillor Quigg. All those in favour of Mrs Hazel Hill?
No, Janice.
Sorry, I'm not.
I'm sorry.
Next item on the agenda. Next item on the agenda is to review and adopt the standing orders and financial regulations.
Presenting of new committees.
Would anyone like to announce a new committee? I agree. I think 4 is enough. So moving on to item number 18. The next item on the agenda is to review and adopt the standing orders and financial regulations. Councillor Ives, Councillor Thompson.
On a point of order, you may recall in January declared an interest in item 7. And it wasn't raised, that particular item, in terms of any contribution from myself, but you kindly asked councillor Allen to discuss a problem that had arisen. And I'm asking whether you've actually had a report back from councillor Allen on that subject, since you requested him to meet with myself.
It's not for discussion at this meeting.
Standing order. Well, it's because it's a declaration of my interest in the subject, which is a repeat of the one in January. Well, yeah, I have to declare an interest in the outcome.
You gain by that.
Sorry?
How is that pecuniary or affected interest?
That's not interest.
Yeah, in the report back from what the deputy mayor requested. If you want to bring it up in another item, that's fine.
This is.
And if you want to adjourn it to the next meeting, that's fine, but it just drags out further.
No, I think, sorry, Sir Thompson, I think you're not getting the right meaning of declaring an interest. You declare an interest if, for example, you're like chairman of a board and we're deciding if we're going to use that company that you're on.
Yeah, well, I do fully understand that, but the one I raised in January was pertinent. And it wasn't, nobody mentioned it wasn't pertinent at the time. And the mayor accepted this suggestion, which he put forward.
Can we take that away from this meeting, please?
By all means, because that was your suggestion. I was just wondering whether you'd had a report back.
So all those in favour, or sorry, a seconder for standing orders and financial regulations, please. Thank you, councillor Allen. All those in favour?
Changes to make.
No. It's your chance to shine, councillor Mrs. Chris.
Thank you. Yeah. Right, okay, couple of suggestions for amends to standing orders. First one, which I hope is not contentious and it really should be quite easy, is that if an agenda is going to be published before a meeting, as they always are, and it quotes somebody by name, whether that person is a councillor or whether they are a member of the public, then as a matter of courtesy, whoever that person is that's quoted has the agenda 48 hours beforehand to make sure that how and why and where their name is being quoted is being done so correctly. So it's just a matter of courtesy of administration. We write that into the standing orders. That's our proposal.
I'm happy to second that. How would it go?
Item 3. Probably B.
It's meetings generally.
3B. Present B. Well, above present B.
It would have to go somewhere in the first. Yeah.
Round about 3B.
I think between D and E.
Yep.
Councillor Edwards.
I don't necessarily disagree with that idea, but doesn't the agenda have to be set at the same time? Because if you could put the agenda items up to 7 days, but we have to note someone 48 hours before that would be a difficulty to note.
Look, you have to, if you want something to appear on the agenda, you have to submit it no later than 7 days before the meeting so that the executive officer can include it. So if you were going to, for instance, put a motion in the agenda that quoted me for some reason, then with this amendment in the standing orders, you'd have to do it more than 7 days to allow for that 48 hours. Or if a motion had been quoted, carried, or something had been debated at a meeting previously and a councillor is quoted, then that goes to the person beforehand to make sure that they are being quoted correctly. And we're doing this specifically to overcome an issue that arose when a councillor was quoted erroneously, and it's been extremely problematic to overcome that. So we felt an easy solution would be just to say, if you're going to have an agenda item that uses somebody's name, that you afford them the courtesy of agreeing to it before it goes out. Because obviously once that agenda is published, it goes on the website as well as to all of us.
Councillor Birch.
I need some more clarification on that, if I may, before. We give everybody a week because we publish an agenda. And if someone is mentioned in that agenda, they would have the opportunity to prepare whatever support or to challenge that before the meeting. Now, are you saying that if someone's mentioning it, they should be given the opportunity to challenge the item on the agenda completely, etc. And if they didn't like what was being quoted or said, etc.
Come back.
Yeah, because that to me,
So it's straightforward.
why don't you agree?
That's really straightforward. So let's run a scenario. So we're going to talk, you mentioned in the last planning meeting that Sandhurst is going to be covered by concrete. Actually, that's not what you said at all. That's not what you said. Exactly. So before that goes onto an agenda, which could never be taken down because it's a legal document, we might want to check whether you as the councillor actually said that. And I'll tell you what, you did. What you said is you'd like to keep it in its green, lovely environment that we're all very happy to live with. So can we just change that before that gets posted? That's it.
To clarify, once an agenda is published, it is a document that cannot be changed. So that is why, that's why we're saying before it gets published, at which point it can't be changed, let's just as a courtesy make sure that the person who is quoted is happy with what is being put up and published, given that once it is published, it cannot be changed.
Councillor Thompson.
I'd like to answer Councillor Dale Birch's question because he wanted to understand where the problem arose. The problem arose specifically, which is why I declared an interest in the outcome of this particular item, because you mentioned that everybody is circulated the agenda, but it's too late once it's circulated. You can't do anything about it. That's the reason for requesting that the agenda is put in a draft form first and circulated to those who are named in the agenda, because that does not take place, because there is no draft agenda under the present system. There is for minutes, but not for the agenda. So the clarity is the people who are named in an agenda, and it doesn't matter whether they're a councillor or the chap next door, as long as they're a resident of Sandhurst, then if they're named, they should be circulated with a draft agenda, or at least enough of the agenda that mentions them for them to be able to comment on it. It's not a matter of courtesy, it's a matter of opportunity before it becomes a fact, a historical fact. Does that clarify your question, if I may ask that?
Councillor Mrs Coppins.
Yeah, so I was just going to do a slight take on that. It isn't necessarily that the whole agenda has to go out, but just that one item number that to go, just to say this is what's going to be put on. Does that suit? You know, is that correct? What you're meaning? I think it's quite a.
Councillor Brown Birch.
Just one thing about possibly the wording when you say to check if that person is happy with it. I would possibly say maybe that it should be correct, because you may send something to someone and they may have said it, but they may come back and say, oh, but I'm not happy with that being in the agenda. Do you know what I mean? I think correct is
Fine.
but
Correct. Graham, congratulations, you've out-pedanted a pedant. Well done.
I'm not sure if that's a compliment.
Commenting, in standing orders, it says a minimum of 3 clear days notice of a meeting is given. So it's 3 days notice of the agenda going out. So the agenda goes out with 3 clear days notice, not including the day it goes out or the day of the meeting. I couldn't see anything here about 7 days for agenda items.
That's if a motion is raised to go on. That's for 7 clear days before.
Okay. But I mean, there are 2 motions on tonight's agenda which were requested by individuals, and it actually says their name when they request them. Do they then have to have that 2 days in advance because their name's been put against that agenda item?
And anything that goes on the agenda has been requested by the individual.
Exactly. So in that case, no, because there are 2, as you say, 2 motions on the agenda, one from myself and one from councillor Edwards. So of course, as we've submitted those, we don't need to see those because we're the ones that have submitted them. But if somebody else, if I had submitted something that named councillor Edwards, for instance, that I saw councillor Edwards said, I don't know, Sandhurst should be covered in concrete. And then it's only fair and right that councillor Edwards sees that to make sure that it is correct and that he has been quoted correctly.
That's all it is.
So all it is.
I mean, generally, I'm happy with it as long as we don't have to be going backwards and forwards with the people who are submitting motions, having to go back to them for 48 hours before. I'm just double checking. So it's anyone who hasn't submitted a motion, but their name still appears specifically on an agenda item.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Am I allowed to speak again? I've got another question. Who has the final decision?
The agenda belongs to the executive officer.
Exactly.
I don't actually have to ask anybody, and even the chairs, we meet as courtesy, but there is no legislation that says I have to run it past anybody. The only legislation is that I have to display it in the time stipulated.
Councillor Graham.
I know I've already spoke. I think it's probably the same sort of thing that I've just asked, is if it well, 2 things. If it goes out and someone comes back and says, no, I don't believe that's correct, would that then be pulled from that agenda until a later date? How would that be handled and then investigated? That's my first thing.
It would be my decision.
So that's what just there.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I guess, if someone quotes a member of the public, it probably, and then it is in the agenda and it turns out to be incorrect, I guess that could cause a problem as well. So I don't know whether or not what our liabilities would be for that, or, I mean, I can't necessarily imagine that many situations, but it's something that should be considered. Sorry.
Yeah, if I may add to that, because that's the specific point that I'm concerned about. It's not whether it's a councillor. In this particular example, I wasn't even on the committee, and therefore I would not have been circulated about it, and I might not have seen it until after the meeting had been held. There was only a chance that I happened to look at the whole agenda before the meeting, and I did raise it with the chair. Can't remember whether I raised it with the executive officer. I certainly did with the chair of the committee at the time.
Thank you, Philip.
And there was nothing anybody could do about it.
That's a good point.
Thank you. Okay.
Now speak to.
Councillor Mrs Williams first.
Okay.
Just to say to what Anne just said, that it is your decision
Yeah,
what goes on
absolutely.
the agenda. It's, I guess the point is about fair representation. Excuse me. Fair representation of what if people are being cited. This the issue, and I'm sure, Badge, that you would want to fairly represent people.
I believe that I do.
Yeah.
Councillor Dale Birch.
Thanks. My earlier input was a question. Our rights to speak to the motion that was put. I'm worried about this.
There's a surprise.
Yeah, there's a surprise. Why am I worried about it? Because one of the things I've done for a very long time is make sure that the activities of this council are proportionate, are correct, and are represent the wishes of the people as closely and as accurately as we can. What I'm worried about here is, can this be used inappropriately? Can someone not like what has been put on the agenda for this council legitimately, and then I'll make a fuss in order to get it removed, or probably, in my view, worse still, try and get it rewritten, etc. Is this the problem, the all single the problem that we're trying to remedy? I quite understand a resident, a member of the public needing to have a say, but I'm troubled if a quote or whatever was put in about a councillor, etc., and the councillor then sought to try and adjust it because it didn't put them in a. I follow what I mean. So I just want to make sure that if we're going to do something like this, and here I go again, that the consequences of it are examined properly. And is someone happy? You then took that to the point of is it correct? But it's not just about that. It's if we may all believe it's correct, they may not, etc. So at what point, and I know it's the executive officer's final decision, but I'm troubled that we may give the impression with this that if you don't like something on the agenda, if you get in early, you can get it changed. You still haven't clarified it and made it clean and neat enough for me. So I'm not as comfortable as some.
Just before we move on.
Philip,
You've already spoken.
Everybody's spoken twice. Everybody has spoken twice.
Lee's going to come back. Sit down for us.
I'm at the hands of the chair.
I think we've heard a lot of statements tonight on this item. So I think we'll draw a line under it and move on, if that's okay with you.
I was going to endorse one point, and that was that the executive officer's decision is final.
Yeah, she said that.
Yeah. So I think it covers the point you're making.
Sorry, Chair.
Chair, having raised the motion very briefly, I think what you've omitted to pick up, councillor, is what your son said is about using the word correct. So if a councillor is quoted correctly, there isn't an issue. It's not about kicking up a fuss. It's not about being seen in a bad light. This is about whether somebody is quoted correctly. And that is why we want the standing orders changed to reflect the request. It's as simple as that. I really thought this one was going to be quite an easy one, the least contentious. Clearly I was wrong.
Can we move on?
Yep. I'd like to vote on
Voting on it.
Okay. All those in favour of the motion from Mrs. Quick?
Thank you.
So standing orders and financial regulations will be amended as a
More easy ones.
I have one last request. We have one last motion to file. Okay. So, for those of us who are on strategy and policy, the exclusion section of agendas is used periodically. It's not a rarity, let's put it that way. And a colleague of mine has made us aware that, in fact, when you again look at the HALC, Hampshire Association of Local Councils guidance, in terms of their key topic note on confidential business, it says sometimes during a meeting, a council will decide to move an item into a confidential session where they are straying into discussions about matters that are prejudicial to the public interest. The council should resolve to exclude the press and public for continued discussion of the item concerned. But there should be very clear minuted reasons for doing this, and councils should not do this because something feels uncomfortable to discuss in a public session. And coincidentally, some councils, for example, may feel that co-option should be dealt with in a confidential session. But this is not a confidential matter and should be resolved in public. So with that guidance in mind from HALC, and in accordance with our approach to open and transparent democracy, we propose that standing orders are updated to reflect a very clear agreement on the very limited areas that should fall within the exclusion boundaries. That may well be, for instance, staff remuneration. Absolutely that fall within an exclusion. Unless there are any other matters that people may suggest that should automatically fall under an exclusion, it's something that we feel should be the point of last resort and be very clearly agreed here. What are those areas that fall under the exclusion? And if moving forward in this coming financial year, the exclusion is warranted, then it is also discussed and minuted why it is warranted. Thank you.
Happy to second that. Thank you, Councillor Foster. Would any, Councillor Owen?
I don't have a real issue with it. I'm just surprised because I don't think we've ever pushed anything into the into the part 2 session where it hasn't either been contractual or employment, or something money related that shouldn't get out. So I'm just surprised it's come up. I don't have a real issue with it, but I'm happy to document it.
Councillor Owens.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. I would like to point out that at the very first council meeting that I attended, where co-options were done, the public was excluded incorrectly. That is a point matter of fact, and it's minuted too.
I don't remember that.
It's in the minutes.
Okay, fine. In that case, I forgot that. Sorry.
Councillor Dalberg.
Can I, before speaking, just check exactly what the change, the wording you are looking for in this? What's the actual wording, please?
That there are very clear parameters discussed and agreed by us here tonight as to what falls under the exclusionary parameters. And if therefore something comes up that is outside of those parameters, it should not fall within the exclusion section of an agenda.
Councillor Mrs. Owen Wilson.
Sorry, that was my clarification before speaking, please. Because we already have very clear guidance of what constitutes that which can be excluded under the exclusion of press and public. And it quite often has, according to section so-and-so of the representation, it has some technical point on it. And members will have heard me on a number of occasions when we've reached that point, me saying seconded, so that it forms a proper motion as such, rather than just a notice stating to non-members, there's the door. Now, there are clear guidelines already about what can be classed as exempt and what can't. So why do we need to re-emphasize? Because I can remember on a number of occasions we would contact the borough solicitor to clarify certain things. But so we need now to have and I didn't quite get that as a motion, clear parameters as to what falls under the parameters for exclusion. The only things, as far as I'm concerned, we can use are that which are already the law. And that's how I've always believed the use of the exclusion clauses and the exclusion of press and public for the consideration of personnel or contract or confidential information. I've always believed that we were working to, and I know we have been, the very strictest of rules already set down. But what clear parameters would we now wish to try and list in order to add to an already exhaustive and verifiable list of exclusion parameters? I think this is over-egging an existing and a very detailed exclusion policy.
Councillor Mrs. Ellen Ross.
Thank you. Where I agree that we should be careful what we exclude people for, I don't think you can actually come up with an exhaustive list of what you would exclude for. Because I think each one of us could scribble a list and still miss something that might happen in the next 6 months. And I think we've just got to be able to trust that if the chair and the executive officer think it is appropriate to exclude, you exclude. I'd sort of agree, but not that you can only exclude press and public for anything that's on this list. Because sure as God made little apples, next week there'll be something else. And you can't do that. Am I making sense, or are you just going to sleep?
Makes sense. No, you're making sense.
Oh, thank God.
I'm not going to sleep just yet.
Good. Is that a proposal? Proposed. I'm
So-
not doing that.
Just to answer you both. So there are clear guidelines in terms of the press and public. It says that in accordance with the Public Bodies Act, the press will be excluded for discussion regarding the engagement, terms of service and conduct of employees where publicity might be prejudicial to the special nature of the business. So that's very much around employees, which is basically kind of what I was saying about remuneration. But it is our perception that the exclusions have been used with a far greater latitude, where in our opinion they shouldn't have been. Now, for instance, if we're talking about commercial negotiations and discussions, I could understand that if there was a contract that was under negotiation, of course, it could potentially impinge a commercial discussion. However, once that commercial discussion is over, as we have all discussed in previous meetings, it becomes a matter of public fact. So once the commercial negotiation is finished, anything around that lease, contract, whatever, shouldn't fall within the press and exclusion. And our perception is that it has been relied upon and used too much in the past, which is why we would like a greater, tighter definition, so that moving forward, as I say, on our belief in an open and transparent democracy, that less is put behind the door and more is open. Hope that qualifies and clarifies.
So the motion is put before the council. It has been seconded. All those in favour? All those against? So it falls to the against. I move to agenda item and
Move the standing orders for with the previous amendment.
so I would like to propose the standing orders and financial regulations be approved. Is that seconded? All those in favour, please show.
Hands up.
Thanks, Dan.
And those against, please. I move to agenda item 19 to review the partnership and subscription arrangements. Does any councillor wish to make a comment? I would like to propose the attached partnership and subscription arrangements be approved. Is that seconded?
I'll just second that, Chair.
All those in favour, please show. Those against? Town Council, moving on to item number 20. Town Council is required to appoint councillors to act as representatives on outside bodies, and while this can be completed at this meeting, it's traditionally been delegated and completed in the next meeting of the Environment Committee. I would like to propose we maintain tradition and that the appointment of councillors to act as representatives on the outside bodies be delegated to the next meeting of the Environment Committee, which is next week. Is that seconded?
Second, Chair.
All those in favour, please show. Those against? And could any councillor wishing to put their name forward as a representative for an outside body that is not a member of the Environment Committee, please inform the executive officer of their requests by the Wednesday, the 7th of May, in order for them to be considered at the meeting. Moving on to agenda item 21, and that is to review the inventory of land and assets. I'd like to propose the attached inventory of land and assets be noted. Is that seconded?
Chair.
All those in favour? All those against? Move to agenda item 22 to receive confirmation of the council's insurance cover arrangements. The EO has provided details of insurance cover in a paper. I would like to propose that the insurance cover be noted. Is that seconded?
It's the information items.
All those in favour, please show.
Just information.
Yes, well, we don't need to. Yeah.
Under agenda item 23, councillors are asked to review and adopt the current complaints procedure. I would like to propose the attached complaints procedure be approved. Is that seconded?
Second that, Chair.
Thank you, councillor Hunt. All those in favour, please show.
Point of order.
You want to remind him?
I would like to propose an amend, please.
Councillor Mrs. Quick, please.
This should probably be as faint as my voice as I am as speaking. So, this is something that we raised and discussed last year. And from us now having 2 years experience as councillors, it is our perception that the council needs more robust personnel management processes. There was a great deal of discussion, for instance, around the bonuses and how they are decided. There was discussion last year about the complaints process that, after a great deal of discussion, was voted through this time last year. Subsequently, it came back that actually that identifying or singling out the role of the executive officer, and this is about the role, this is not about the person. Very clear, this is about the role and personnel management. We propose that any complaints against the executive officer role should be handled externally. This was voted through, but then feedback at a subsequent meeting was that that wasn't possible, appropriate, because legal advice had been that it was discriminatory, singling one role out. So with that in mind, and as I said, given our experience of what we've seen and heard over the last 12 months about the personnel management and oversight, we propose again that any complaints against any member of staff, whether it's the executive officer, their deputy, any members of the administrative function, whomever, are managed externally. And we believe it's very important, it's a really important principle of any effective organisation that personnel management and all of the procedures that go with that are handled sensitively and appropriately and by skilled, experienced personnel professionals and managers who are used to dealing with that on a day-to-day basis. So our proposal, therefore, is that all personnel management, including staff reviews, exit interviews and complaints, are managed externally, reviewed externally, and are managed independently. This body would then report into the personnel subcommittee. And what this means, it is entirely and wholly external to and separate from any of the councillors, because otherwise it is the council who is marking its own homework. Therefore, we propose this motion.
I second that motion. Thank you. All those in favour, please. Might be for it. Councillor Dalbert.
No, sorry,
Councillor Brosser.
As Councillor Krug will be aware, we do actually have HR consultants who work with us. Any complaints that we get against a council employee, we do refer to them anyway. In most circumstances, I won't say every circumstances. I'm sure that there will be times when we haven't thought it necessary to do such. But I think the idea of having an entirely separate body, and it sounds like it's outside our HR consultants.
Could be this.
I feel, I mean, basically this, I think we'll add quite a bit of cost, for example, because I don't think that's been costed as to how much, our current HR consultants, they're contracted to do a certain amount of work, and doing face-to-face interviews isn't part of that role. So they don't currently do that sort of thing. So I'm challenged that it has been costed. I don't think, you're basically saying our HR skills are crap. But we do take advice from our HR consultants, and we follow that advice, because if we don't follow that advice, we're not covered. So we have to follow their advice.